Hello and welcome to the second video. I just finished recording that one, and I'm gonna start doing this one. And this is going to be the medium creatures. That was the small ones, this is the medium. Alright, now I already said everything about that video, but I'll quickly go over it again, unless this is the first one you're watching. Because that was part 1, part 2, and then part 3 over there. And it'll be that I will not be going over any event, DLC, boss, or flying or aquatic creatures, as they will be covered in other videos. I will also only be going over the creatures here on the island. Let's begin with the Beelzebufo. The Beelzebufo spawns in the swamp. Now, they are not aggressive, and if you tame them, you can then use them for two purposes. One, they do a small amount of torpor, and they are great travelers. They can jump very far, and they're quite fast swimmers. And two, cementing paste, as if you do the attack, they have two attacks. They have a longer tongue attack, which will go in the direction you look, but they also have a wide attack. Now, both of these attacks are for the most part the same, but if I'm not mistaken, the wide attack does more damage and also will gather more cementing paste. That's right, the frog gathers cementing paste if you eat bugs with it. So that means if you eat right here, these are some prime examples, the Megalonias or the ants, you'll gain cementing paste from eating them. Now, it's only really the small bugs that you'll gain it from, and the best place to do that is by far in the swamp cave here on the island. So that's the one in the redwood. That cave is loaded with Megalania, and you'll gather hundreds or maybe even thousands of cementing paste in a very small amount of time. Now, let's move on next to the Titanoboa. The Titanoboa is tameable. It likes to eat eggs. I'm not sure if it's fertilized or not fertilized eggs that it likes, but it likes to eat eggs. You cannot ride it, but you can tame it. Now, if you kill it, just hide and stuff. It can be dangerous, as it can knock you out if it's poison. Next up is the Arthropluera. The Arthropluera, they spawn mostly just in the caves. They have a very unique feature, which is that they have just a normal bite. They're also quite good climbers, but they have a spit attack, which spits acid. Now, this acid is lethal to your armor and weapons, as if it hits you or your armor, it will melt it. It will literally melt it. So it will either break it completely or take down its durability drastically. It can also damage every single type of structure. Arthropluera is a passive tame. It likes spoiled meat, but also has a preferred kibble. Next up is the Megalania. Also spawns mostly just in caves. Now, they have a very unique climbing feature. Now, I don't have anything around here to climb, but they can climb up all surfaces. That means they can climb straight up a wall. They can then walk around the wall. They can even walk on the ceiling, which can be very useful. Now, they also have a unique attack, which they will give Mega Rabies if they bite you. Which, Mega Rabies is a temporary disease that lasts for, I think, 90 seconds. That's a minute and a half. And it drains your stamina and health drastically. You will die from Mega Rabies. It also is contagious, so don't spread it to your fellow teammates. And it also is curable through the lesser antidote, same goes for the disease leech. They're the only two real prominent diseases in the game. Next up is the Gigantopithecus. Can be found a little bit all over the place. Redwood is one of the places you can be found. It is a passive tame, so that means you have to come up behind it, feed its preferred food, berries or its kibble. And once you've tamed it, you can ride it without a saddle. It is quite fast. It can jump ever since the TLC updates. It can do an attack. It's quite strong, actually. It can also gather fiber, which can be very useful. And it can also throw you. You can aim where you want it to throw you. And it can throw you ridiculously far. The next creature is the Kentrosaurus. Now, Kentrosauruses are very dangerous because of their spikes. They can impale you on their tail and any other smaller creatures, and they can drain you of your life. Now, they are aggressive, but you have to get very close to them for them to attack you. Now, if you manage to tame them, simple knockout tame, use the preferred food, berries or kibble. You cannot ride them, but you can then have them patrolling around your base, as they also work the same as spike wolves, which means that the bigger the creature, the more damage they'll take if they step on them or attack them. And now, next up is the Daeodon or Daeodon. Now, they can spawn mostly just in the snow, and they are quite dangerous, as they have a very powerful healing effect. So that means that they are very tanky and hard to kill, as they will rapidly heal them and the other creatures around them fighting with them. They work together with dire wolves and other creatures in the snow. Not all of them, but some of them. Now, if you manage to tame them, simple knockout tame, you can then use this to heal your creatures in battle. So that means especially when you're fighting bosses or other players. But this uses a huge amount of food, and you need to make sure that it has plenty of food in its inventory, because otherwise it will starve quite quickly and it won't be able to use the healing effect. Now, next one is the Megaloceros. This is the male and female. Now, they're just basically, they are good at traveling. They have a very nice jump, and that's basically the extent of what they're good at. Now, the male is unique, as it has the antlers, and it can actually attack, which the female cannot. And it is actually one of the best thatch collectors in the game. They can spawn in the snow and the redwood. Next up is the Anky, a very useful and very popular tame, because it is the best metal farmer in the game, or at least one of them. Now, metal weighs 85% less in its inventory. It also is one of the best gatherers of metal. So a good tactic is to get an Anky and an RG, or a Quetzal, and carry it from metal node to metal node, while only leveling weight in the Quetzal or RG, and only melee in the Anky. Because then the RG and Quetzal do all the carrying, while the Anky does the farming, as if you level more melee, it'll gather more. It's a simple knockout tame, can be found around mountains and redwood, mostly in the northern areas of the map. Next up is the Phiomia. This is a very well-known animal. You can find them quite easily. It's basically a pig, but it's actually just a smaller elephant. Now, they have no real use. They're not very fast. They can't jump. They can attack, but they're not strong. Their main use is that if you feed them stimberries, they will start pooping like crazy. And this is great with a combination of compost bins or a dung beetle, like we saw over in the previous video. That is their main use. You don't need high levels. Putting levels into food is your best tactic, when you feed them stimberries, the food goes down. So the more food they have, the more you can feed them stimberries. Alright, next up is the dire bear, mostly just found in the redwood. Now, the dire bear is unique as it has a charge. You'll sprint and slowly start speeding up and up and up and up and up, and it can go very, very, very fast. It also has protection against bees. If you look down in the bottom right hand corner, you can see that it has bee protection. You have some protection from bees. It is great at harvesting honey from beehives. It also has a roar. It's a strong fighter, and it can be very useful within your tribe. It's quite tanky. It also does quite a bit of damage, so it could be very useful. Next up is the Para, also a very well-known creature in the game. Now, the Para used to be simple, but quite simple. A very early game berry farmer. It gathers a little bit of berries, and it runs away when you try to attack it. You can bowl it, and it's a knockout tame, and it likes berries. But since the last video, it got a TLC update, which means that now it has a new feature, which is that it has a sonar. Now, you can change the sonar and even put it on turret mode so it does it automatically, so that it can detect everything, creatures only, so that means wild ones, players and their tames, or just players. And this can be very useful. It has quite a large range. It is not very fast, but it's a decent mount. It has very nice carry weight in the beginning. So if you manage to tame one of these and put a saddle on it, it can be very useful. Next up is the Equus. Now, the Equus is simply just a horse. You might see them just wandering around, and they are very unique tames. What you have to do is you have to sneak up behind them, feed their preferred food. They like carrots, but I think they also have a preferred kibble, but raw carrot are the easiest you can use. You have to sneak up behind them, press E to feed them. Once they're eating the carrots, you can then get on them. They'll try to shake you off. You have to feed them again by clicking the button that you used to feed them. And then once they'll start running around, they'll try to throw you off. And then you feed them again once they try to throw you off, until they're eventually tamed. Now, they have a simple attack, which isn't very impressive. They also have a back kick, and the back kick actually does a very good amount of torpor. So you can use this to knock out smaller animals or players. But since you have to be aiming backwards, it can be quite hard to aim. Now, it does not need a saddle to ride, but it does have a saddle. The saddle is unique and used as a mortal and pestle. You can also make a lasso. A different variant of the Equus is the Unicorn. Now, the Unicorn is unique as it only can spawn one on the map. So only one unicorn can be found on the map at one time. It's the same as an Equus in just about every way, except that it's, you know, a unicorn. Next up is the Iguanodon. Now, the Iguanodon is also found a little bit all over the map, same as the Parasaur, but is much rarer. Now, the Iguanodon is unique as it can convert berries and other things into seeds. It is a decent berry farmer, better than the Para, I'm pretty sure. It's also quite fast. It's also bipedal, which means that it can walk on both. It's all four, and be faster and conserve, and be much better at conserving stamina. So it'll use very little. Or it can go on its hind legs, and it'll be a much stronger attacker, but won't be as fast, and it'll use stamina. But it can jump when it's only using its 2 feet. Now to tame it, simple knockout tame. Next up is the Thylacoleo. Now these are dangerous. What they can do is they will be found in the redwood, hiding on redwood trees, waiting for an opportunity to pounce. Now once they pounce, they can then pull you off of your flyer, for example, and maul you on the ground until you die. To tame them, it's a simple knockout tame, but they can be very dangerous for that situation. They can walk up and down walls, which can be very useful, and you can also pull enemy players off of their tames, or pounce small creatures. I think the Para is one of the bigger creatures that it can pounce. Now, as if you look at its bite, it also has a roar. Alright, next up is the Carbonemys, or Carbonemys, or just simply turtle. You've probably seen these. They cannot go into their shell, which kind of sucks, but they are still useful. So if you manage to tame them through knocking them out, they are decently fast in the water, and you can also stand on their shell and just ride them around. They are very tanky. Next up is the Pachycephalosaurus. Now, the Pachycephalosaurus is like the watered-down version of the Trike. It has this attack. What this attack does is it releases a gas which pacifies carnivorous or dangerous creatures so that they stop attacking you. This could be very useful. It also blinds enemy players. Next up is the Trike, also a very well-known creature. Now the Trike is found pretty much anywhere, just like the Pachycephalosaurus, but is a lot more common and can be found on the beaches, the jungles, and on the plains. Now the Trike is a much better bear form than the Para. It is a knockout tame. They can be quite dangerous as they have an insane knockback, and they also have a charge ability. You have to wait until the red heart icon in the right side of your screen fills all the way up, and you let go of right click, and it'll charge. This will go straight through trees. It'll also stun the creatures if you hit them with this attack. That does use a decent amount of stamina. They absorb way less damage from the front, from their head. So taming them, you'll have to shoot their body and not their head, as it will take longer if you go for their head. And it can also be used as an early game bullet sucker. Next up is the Gallimimus. Now these are one of the fastest creatures in the game. They are, especially if you level their movement speed and breed them. They have a 3-person saddle. They are very fast. They are a knockout tank. You can, or at least could, bolo them. But they're mainly used as just long-distance travelers. Next up is the Chalicotherium. And the Chalicotherium is quite a dangerous creature if it starts attacking. They are in groups, normally. And if you get too close to them, they'll get angry and they'll attack you. Their preferred food is actually beer. And it's a passive tame. So you have to pass the table with beer. Now once you have then tamed them, you can then have just a normal attack, and you have a rock throwing attack. Now this does damage to structures and players, and I'm also betting it does a lot of knockback. Let's see how much range it has. It has very nice range for its rock throwing ability. Next up is the Procoptodon, one of my favorite creatures in the game. Procoptodon is a very fast, also has a very nice jump creature. You can find them rarely on the mountains. And they also have a unique thing where they actually have a kick, which can knock things back. If you hold jump button, you can then jump extremely high up, like ridiculously high, They also have just a normal headbutt. And I also know that they can actually pick up small creatures or baby animals in their pouch and either move them around or keep them safe. They do have a very unique ability. I'll put it up on screen what it is because I honestly can't remember at this current moment. It has to do with baby animals. Now, the preferred food is rare mushrooms. They're a knockout 10. Next up is the Baryonyx. Baryonyx can be quite dangerous, especially in the water. It's just a normal bite attack, spawn in the swamps and rivers. It has this attack, which will throw you off your tame. It'll also stun you for a few seconds so you can't move, which means that it could be very dangerous if it does that attack at the wrong time. It seems to have a roar. It's not very loud. It can jump. It's quite fast. And then let's move on to the next one, which is the Carno, which is basically the cheap Rex. Now, a little while ago, the Carno got a model update. It's very hard to see, but it's basically just higher detail. Slightly. Even though it has, in my opinion, one of the loudest, most annoying running sound effects in the game. Now, it has 2 attacks. It has just a simple bite attack and a right-click attack, which does a headbutt, which will impale creatures with its horns. This will give them a bleed effect that will drain their health in percentage amounts for a few seconds. This can be very useful for killing higher health creatures. It doesn't have any other abilities really, but it is a strong fighter, especially in the early game if you manage to be able to knock it out and tame it, as it is a knockout tame. Just use either prime or its preferred kibble. And then we have a variant of the Carno, the Alpha Carno. As you can see, it is much bigger than the normal Carno, and is much more dangerous than the Alpha Raptor, as it can have upwards of 35 to 40,000 health, and does a lot of damage. It is much faster than the normal Carno, and can definitely run most people down. But if you manage to kill it, it'll give a lot more XP than the Alpha Raptor, and can give some very nice loot. It is much rarer than the Alpha Raptor, though. Okay, next up is the Megaloceros. I need to wake him up real quick. Or, not Megaloceros, Megalosaurus, sorry. Okay, the Megalosaurus can be found in caves. Now, it has a unique thing, which it's very sluggish, tired during the day. It's groggy, basically. And, its unique thing is that it can actually pick up creatures with its mouth. What the unique thing is that it actually is one of the only creatures in the game that can pick up flyers. It can pick up creatures as big as the Argentavis, which is quite insane. Because normally flyers are never able to be picked up. The one problem with the Megalosaurus is that during the day it's very tired, and as you can see, it has a sleep depth. That sleep depth will keep rising unless it gets to go to sleep. Now, once it gets to the max sleep depth, it will then forcefully go to sleep. You won't be able to use it until the sleep depth has gone all the way down again. It also has a roar, I'm pretty sure. Yes, it does. Now, during the night, it is boosted. It'll have more health. It has more damage. It has more speed. It is overall much better at night. Its eyes also glow. So it is a nighttime tame or a flyer carrier tame. You can find them in the caves as a knockout. Next up is the woolly rhino. Now, the woolly rhino is found in the snow. They have a basic attack, but their main thing is their charge. Now, this can be used to farm even more thatch than the Megaloceros. So that means huge amounts of thatch if you just charge through the trees. They are a knockout tame. They can be found in the snow. They can also be killed for their horns. Next up is the Stegosaurus. Also a very well-known creature that has been updated since the last time. Now, it's a simple knockout tame. Can be found pretty much everywhere. Now, once it is tamed, it can be used. It used to be used as a later game berry farmer on the trike. But since its TLC update, it now has 3 different modes. It has the first mode, heavy plate. This mode, what it'll do is in all modes, it prevents dismounting, but each mode has a unique thing. And in this one, it massively slows down creatures if you hit them. They'll be moved extremely slowly, which can be very useful in combat if you knock them back, as they won't be able to get to you as they can barely move. It also has an impale attack. And what that'll do is that if a creature, let's test that on this Phiomia, as long as the Stego has stamina, it can then use the impale attack on a creature. There we go. As long as the Stego has stamina, it will continue to impale the creature. This is a high level Phiomia, so it won't die very easily. So leveling stamina is a good idea. Now its next mode is sharpen mode. This has armor penetration. Also should probably say one more thing about the heavy plate, which is the heavy plate is used for thatch farming. Sharpened plate, armor penetration used for berry farming. The Stego is also the only creature in the game which has reduced weight on berries. And hardened plate will have damage reduction and is also used for wood farming. So the Stego is a wood, thatch, and berry farmer. So it is very useful in the early to mid game. It does have headshot damage, so when you're taming it, make sure you go for the head or the body and not for the spine or tail, as it takes reduced damage there. And won't knock out as quickly. Next, we have the Megatherium. Neat thing, you can tell the Megatherium to sit down or stand up. At the Megatherium, you'll find them wandering around in the redwood and in the snow. What their unique thing is that they get a little bit angry when there's bugs around. And they'll gain a bug boost, if you will. That will make it so that they do increased damage, like a lot more damage to bugs. Which means that they can be very useful against the Broodmother, for example, the Broodmother boss. And are very useful at chitin farming. They can also be useful for the swamp cave if you can actually fit them in there. Because they are quite big. You'll have to use a cryopod. They are a knockout tame. Next up is the Sarco. Now the Sarco is a very cool tame. You can find them in rivers and in the swamp. Or Sarcosuchus. They are quite fast in the water. And you can stand on their back when you're on the surface. They do have a saddle like most creatures, just because I have force tame. And they have just a normal bite attack. Now if you look in the direction that you're attacking, they'll then turn in that direction. Because before, it was massively handicapped because of its terrible turning radius, so it took it forever to turn around. It also has a death roll. Yep. And if the raptor wasn't in my tribe, that raptor would have taken a great amount of damage. You can also grab players as well and do a death roll with them. It also, if you hold on PC, at least it's C. If you hold C, you can then line up crosshair at a creature and it'll leap towards the creature. The range is not very long. Alright, last one in the medium category, part 2, the Therizinosaurus. Now the Therizinosaurus, or Theri, just for short, is a very cool tame. As first of all, it has 3 attacks. A simple swipe attack. This will farm a good amount of wood. A, well, tickle attack. This will farm a good amount of fiber and thatch. And a bite attack, which will farm a good amount of berries. Theri is actually very strong, which means that it can be used as a fighter in a lot of different situations. The one thing with the Theri is that if you want to tame it, which is a knockout tame, same with the Sarco and the Megatherium, you'll have to use a lot of narcotics to keep it unconscious. So it is a slower tame, and it needs a lot of narcotics because otherwise it will wake up. It does have a good amount of health, and it does a good amount of damage. It's basically the herbivore T-Rex. Okay, that was the last out of the medium category, part 2. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I already talked a little bit more in the first one, and I'll see you next time.